I've been thinking about that dance for 3 months now. The way his hand felt on my waist, the warmth of his palm pressed against mine, the way he looked at me when he said he was just practicing, practicing for a slow song at my cousin's wedding. I should probably start from the beginning because the thing is, I didn't even want to go to this wedding. My cousin Rachel and I aren't particularly close. We're the kind of family members who like each other's Instagram posts and exchange pleasantries at Thanksgiving, but that's about it. When the invitation came, embossed and formal with my name in elegant script, my first instinct was to decline. But my mom gave me that look, the one that says you're going, and we both know it. So I RSVP'd yes and bought a new suit. The wedding was at this old estate outside the city, the kind of place with sprawling gardens and string lights wrapped around ancient oak trees. It was beautiful in that effortless way that probably cost a fortune. I arrived alone, which felt appropriate for my life at that moment. I'd been single for almost a year after a relationship that ended not with drama, but with a slow, painful fading that somehow felt worse than a clean break. I was in that phase where I'd convinced myself I was fine with being alone, that I was focusing on myself, all those things we tell ourselves when the truth is, we're just scared to try again. The ceremony was lovely. Rachel looked radiant. Her husband Michael couldn't stop smiling, and I felt that familiar, bittersweet ache watching them exchange vows. Happy for them, but also aware of my own emptiness. I clapped when everyone clapped, wiped my eyes when the moment called for it, and tried not to think too hard about what I was missing in my own life. The reception was in this gorgeous pavilion, open on all sides to let in the evening air. Round tables with white linens, centerpieces of roses and eucalyptus, and a dance floor that gleamed under hundreds of twinkling lights. I found my assigned seat at table 7, which I quickly realized was the miscellaneous singles table. There was Rachel's friend from college, Michael's co-worker who'd just moved to town, a couple of distant relatives I vaguely recognized, and him. His name was James. I learned this when he sat down next to me and extended his hand with a smile that made something in my chest tighten. He had dark hair that was just slightly too long, falling across his forehead in a way that made him look younger than he probably was. His eyes were this warm brown, and when he smiled, really smiled, they crinkled at the corners. He wore a navy suit that fit him perfectly, and there was something about the way he carried himself, confident but not arrogant, that immediately put me at ease. We started talking the way strangers at weddings do, exchanging the basic information. He was Michael's friend from graduate school. They'd been in the same program, stayed close even after James moved back home to take a job at an architecture firm. He was 31, loved hiking, had a dog named Chester who apparently had anxiety and needed special calming treats. The way he talked about Chester with this mixture of exasperation and deep affection made me like him immediately. I told him about myself too, about my job in marketing that I found moderately fulfilling, about the apartment I'd just moved into that still had boxes I hadn't unpacked, about how I'd been trying to cook more instead of ordering takeout, but kept burning things. He laughed at that, a genuine laugh that made his whole face light up, and said he'd once set off his smoke alarm making toast. The evening flowed easily. We ate our dinner, a choice of chicken or salmon that was actually quite good, and kept talking. The conversation never lagged, never felt forced. We moved from light topics to deeper ones without even realizing it. He told me about losing his father 2 years ago, how he still sometimes picked up the phone to call him before remembering. I told him about my own grief, the grandmother who raised me and passed away when I was 25, how I still heard her voice sometimes giving me advice. There was something happening between us, I could feel it. A connection that went beyond polite wedding conversation. The way he leaned in when I spoke, like he didn't want to miss a single word. the way our eyes kept meeting and holding for just a beat too long, the way I found myself noticing details about him, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way he gestured with his hands when he got excited about something, the sound of his laugh. The dancing started after dinner. The DJ played all the expected songs, the ones that get everyone on the floor. Our table gradually emptied as people got up to dance, but James and I stayed seated, still talking. I was hyper-aware of how close we were sitting now, how at some point our chairs had shifted so our knees were almost touching. Then the DJ put on a slow song. Something classic, the kind of song your parents probably danced to at their wedding. I watched couples move onto the floor, swaying together, and felt that familiar loneliness creep back in. I was about to make some joke about it, something self-deprecating to break the tension I was feeling, when James stood up. He held out his hand to me, just like that, no preamble, no explanation. For a second, I just stared at him, my heart suddenly pounding in a way that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. "Come on," he said, and his voice was soft, almost nervous. "Dance with me." I took his hand. It was warm and solid, and the moment our palms touched, I felt this jolt of electricity run through me. We walked to the dance floor together, and I was so aware of everything. The lights overhead, the murmur of conversation around us, the music swelling, the way his thumb brushed across my knuckles. On the dance floor, he turned to face me. There was this moment of uncertainty, both of us seeming to realize what we were about to do, and then he stepped closer and placed his hand on my waist. His other hand held mine, raised up between us in the traditional dance position. I put my free hand on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him through his suit jacket. We started to sway. Neither of us really knew what we were doing. There was no practiced choreography, just two people moving together to music, but somehow it worked. Our bodies found a rhythm, and I let myself sink into the moment. Let myself feel his hand on my waist, firm and sure. Let myself notice how perfectly our heights matched, how easy it was to rest my head on his shoulder if I wanted to. We didn't speak at first. The song played around us, something about love and time and promises, and we just moved. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, or maybe that was my own heart. I couldn't tell anymore where I ended, and he began. His thumb traced small circles on my waist, probably unconsciously, and it was the most intimate thing anyone had done to me in months. Then he spoke, his voice close to my ear, and I felt his breath against my skin. "I should probably tell you something," he said. "What?" I managed to ask, my own voice coming out quieter than I intended. "I'm practicing," he said, and I felt him smile against my temple. "For the next wedding I go to." It took a second for the words to register, and when they did, I pulled back just enough to look at him. His eyes met mine, and there was something in them, humor but also vulnerability, like he was testing the waters, seeing how I'd respond. "You're practicing," I repeated, and I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at my lips. "For a slow song." "Exactly," he said, and his hand on my waist tightened just slightly, pulling me back closer. "Very important to practice slow songs. They're the trickiest." I laughed then, soft and genuine, and shook my head. "That's the worst excuse I've ever heard." "Is it?" he asked, and now he was grinning, that full smile that crinkled his eyes. I thought it was pretty clever. "It's terrible," I said, but I was smiling too, and I let my head rest on his shoulder again. "Absolutely terrible." "Noted," he murmured. "I'll work on my excuses." We kept dancing. The song should have ended by now, but the DJ had mixed it into another slow song, and I was grateful for the reprieve, for the excuse to stay in James's arms a little longer. Around us, other couples swayed, lost in their own worlds, and I felt like we were in a bubble, separate from everything else. "Can I tell you something?" I said after a while, surprising myself with the courage. "Anything," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. I didn't want to come to this wedding. I almost didn't. I was going to make up some excuse and stay home. Yeah? His hand moved up my back slightly, a comforting gesture. Why'd you change your mind? My mom, I admitted. She gave me the look, you know the one. He laughed, and I felt the rumble of it through his chest. I know the one. My mom has the same look. It's genetic, I think, passed down through generations of mothers. If I hadn't come, I said, and then paused, because the weight of what I was about to say felt enormous. If I hadn't come, I wouldn't have met you. The words hung in the air between us. I felt him go still for just a moment, and then he pulled back to look at me. His eyes searched mine, and I saw everything I was feeling reflected back at me. The surprise, the hope, the fear, the possibility. I'm really glad you came, he said quietly. Me too, I whispered. The song ended. The DJ said something about taking a quick break, and the spell was broken. Couples started leaving the dance floor, heading back to their tables or to the bar, and James and I stood there, still holding each other, neither of us quite ready to let go. Finally, reluctantly, we stepped apart. But James didn't let go of my hand. He kept it in his, our fingers intertwined, and led me off the dance floor. We didn't go back to our table. Instead, we drifted toward the edge of the pavilion, where the lights gave way to the darkness of the garden beyond. We stood there in the semi-darkness, and I could hear the party continuing behind us. But it felt distant, like it was happening in another world. James turned to face me, and he was still holding my hand, and I realized I never wanted him to let go. So, he said, and there was nervousness in his voice now, the practiced confidence from earlier slipping away to reveal something more genuine underneath. I have a confession to make. Another one? I asked, trying to keep my tone light even though my heart was racing. The practicing thing, he said, that was completely made up. I mean, obviously. But I just wanted to dance with you, and I panicked, and that's what came out. I squeezed his hand. I know, I said. I knew as soon as you said it. You did. He looked almost embarrassed now, and it was endearing in a way that made me want to kiss him. James, I said gently, it was a slow song. What exactly were you practicing for? See, when you put it that way, it sounds really stupid. It was stupid, I agreed, but I was smiling. But it was also sweet, in a really awkward, transparent way. He laughed, shaking his head. I'm usually better at this, at talking to people I like, but you just, I don't know, you made me nervous. I made you nervous. The idea seemed impossible. He was the one who'd been so confident all evening, who'd made me laugh, who'd asked me to dance. From the moment I sat down next to you, he admitted. I saw you when I walked in, actually, before I even knew where I was sitting. You were standing by the bar, looking at the seating chart, and you had this expression on your face, like you were steeling yourself for something. And I thought, I want to know that person. I want to know what puts that look on their face. My throat felt tight. You noticed me before we even met? I noticed you, he said simply. And then I got to my table, and you were sitting right there, and I thought maybe the universe was trying to tell me something. What was it trying to tell you? I asked, and I moved closer to him, drawn by some magnetic force I couldn't resist. That some things are worth taking a chance on, he said. That sometimes you have to be brave, even when you're scared. Are you scared? I asked. Terrified, he admitted. I haven't felt like this in a long time. Haven't wanted to feel like this, but here you are, and here I am, and I don't want this night to end. It doesn't have to, I said, and the words came out before I could second-guess them. End, I mean. We could, I don't know, exchange numbers, get coffee, see where this goes. I'd like that, he said, and his free hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. I'd really like that. We stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. The party continued behind us, music and laughter floating out into the night, but I barely heard it. All I could focus on was James, the warmth of his hand against my face, the way he was looking at me like I was something precious. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and then his lips were on mine. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was asking permission with every movement. I kissed him back, my free hand coming up to grip his jacket, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, became more sure, and I felt like I was falling and flying at the same time. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Wow," he breathed. "Yeah," I agreed. "Wow." We stayed like that for a while longer, wrapped up in each other at the edge of the party. Eventually we went back inside, back to the celebration, but everything had changed. We didn't leave each other's side for the rest of the night. We danced again to fast songs this time, laughing at our terrible moves. We took silly photos in the photo booth, making ridiculous faces and holding props. We ate wedding cake and drank champagne and talked to other guests, but always together, always touching somehow, hands linked or shoulders pressed together. When the night finally ended, when the DJ played the last song and the lights came up and people started gathering their things, James walked me to my car. We stood in the parking lot under the stars, neither of us wanting to say goodbye. "So," he said, pulling out his phone. "Numbers?" I rattled off my number and he typed it in, then immediately called me so I'd have his. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and the normalcy of the gesture, the promise of future contact, made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. "I'm going to text you tomorrow," he said. "Is that okay? Or is that too soon? I don't want to seem desperate, but I also don't want to play games where I wait 3 days or whatever the rule is supposed to be." "Text me tomorrow," I said firmly. "Text me tonight if you want. There's no rule book for this." "Tonight," he repeated, smiling. "I can do tonight." He kissed me again, slower this time, sweeter, a kiss that felt like a promise. When we pulled apart, I made myself get in my car, made myself start the engine, made myself drive away. In my rearview mirror, I could see him standing there, watching me leave, and my heart felt so full it might burst. He texted me before I even got home. Just 3 words that made me smile so wide my face hurt. "Already practicing again." I laughed out loud in my empty car and typed back. "For what? Another slow song?" "For every dance," he wrote, "for all of them, with you." That was 3 months ago. We've been together ever since, and it's been everything I didn't know I was looking for. Easy and complicated, comfortable and exciting, familiar and new all at once. We've had coffee dates that turned into dinner dates that turned into walking around the city until midnight. We've watched movies on his couch with Chester curled up between us. We've cooked together, me burning things and him patiently showing me how to properly sauté vegetables. We've shared our fears and dreams and embarrassing stories from childhood, and we've danced. In his kitchen at 2 in the morning to music playing from his phone. In the park during a free concert surrounded by strangers. Slowly in his living room when one of us has had a hard day and just needs to be held. He still makes that joke sometimes about practicing. It's become our thing, this private joke that makes us both smile. But the truth is, we're not practicing anymore. This is real. This is the dance that matters. I think about that night at the wedding sometimes, about how close I came to not going, to missing everything. It scares me how easily we might have never met, how many tiny decisions had to align perfectly for us to end up sitting next to each other at table 7. But then I remember what James said about the universe trying to tell us something, about taking chances even when you're scared. And I think maybe some things are just meant to be. Last week, James asked me to be his date to another wedding. A friend of his from work is getting married in the fall, and he wants me there with him. When he asked, he had this look in his eyes, nervous and hopeful, and I realized he was scared I might say no. Scared that maybe this thing between us wasn't as real for me as it was for him. I said yes, of course. And then I asked him if he needed to practice any slow dances before we went. He laughed and pulled me close, swaying with me right there in his kitchen with no music playing at all. I think I've got it figured out now, he said against my hair, but maybe we should practice anyway, just to be sure. So we danced, and it felt like coming home. It felt like every dance we'll ever have, all the moments still to come, all the songs we haven't heard yet. It felt like the beginning of something that's already changed my life completely. All because he asked me to dance at a wedding I almost didn't attend. All because he made up a terrible excuse about practicing for a slow song. All because sometimes when you're brave enough to take someone's hand and step onto the dance floor, magic happens. I'm still thinking about that first dance. I think I always will. But now I'm also thinking about all the dances still to come, and I can't wait for every single one.